Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Tonight, live right here on the Turnbuckle Tavern and live from No Cell Studios on the Ace of the Tavern, Acefield Retro. And as always, joined on a Monday live with the One Bad Chad. What's up, dude?
It feels good to be here live, man. We usually pre-tape these, pull them back the curtain a little bit, tape them on Sundays, unless there's some big pay-per-view Sunday evening, but it feels good to be live. A lot of stuff to talk about, and I feel like we're just trying to keep everyone up to date on the CM Punk, the Elite AEW situation. So we'll get into that shortly. But yeah, great week of pro wrestling news, man.
It's interesting to see how everything evolves over time and how the Punk story almost takes a backseat this week a little bit, but it has evolved. And even before we went on air, it's a good thing we went live, and we'll explain in the third story. It's pretty crazy what went down, if true.
Right.
But you know what? Let's not bury the lead. Let's get into the big three stories and talk about the first one at hand.
Let's do it.
Stories. Story 1.
Story number 1, Nick Aldis has come back to Impact Wrestling. So after the fallout he had with Billy Corgan and NWA, he was the hottest free agent in our opinion. He's a Tavern alum. He's what a world champion personified is, and he finds a home in Impact. And I have to say, Chad, this feels like the perfect fit. I'm so happy to see him back, and not with the Magnus personification. It's with the Nick Aldis thing that he really honed on his way back to Impact.
Yeah, he's kind of pulling a page out of Cody Rhodes' book. As far as, Cody Rhodes kept the name when he went back to WWE, but he had a newly formed gimmick. And here we see Nick Aldis kind of make his bones in the NWA, become, I remember him as Magnus, but where he really got on everyone's radar as true championship material was holding that 10 pounds of gold in Billy Corgan's NWA. And I'm with you, man. To see him back in Impact, I think it's a good move for pro wrestling. This is somebody who is going to be a high contributor to that world heavyweight title division in Impact. And it's kind of a homecoming. I always like seeing guys go back to a place where they kind of staked their claim early in their career. I'm excited to see Nick Aldis mix it up with, the Josh Alexanders when he gets back healthy, and see, Steve Macklin, obviously he went nose to nose with. So I think it's a good move to see Aldis back in the fold of Impact Wrestling.
Yeah. And I think I always looked at this, especially with the UK dates in the summer for obviously Money in the Bank there in London. And we also have AEW All In. I thought he'd play a role in maybe the negotiations to have that face there. And who knows how well he'd draw on a big stage like that. But I love him going to Impact. Like you said, I think it's good for wrestling because he's going to get his chance to shine. I think he would get buried on either roster because of the top heavy nature of how they're constructed. And I think Nick Aldis is cookie cutter for WWE. I think he would do so well there if they would use him appropriately and take him in and give him the Cody Rhodes treatment like you referenced before. But it's an interesting dynamic because he is a guy who is a former Impact World Champion under a different whole persona, but you could tell they're going to strap the rocket to him, and it might take a little bit to get there. As you mentioned, we had Steve Macklin winning the Impact World Championship at Rebellion, but we have a little bit of the PCO stuff going on as well, that PCO is going to get the first shot, but it has to be their biggest stage in July, Slammiversary. Nick Aldis is gunning for it, and it wouldn't shock me to see him just take it from the jump because he's a guy that can be your whole franchise.
Yeah, they have, I believe, two little events, two premium events on their streaming service, and I think you can get them through Fight as well prior to their tentpole event, which is Slammiversary. That is a huge event where I think we're seeing the writing on the wall. That's where they're heading for Slammiversary. He came out and did commentary at Rebellion for the Macklin Kushida match for the vacant world title. And as soon as I saw him come out to do commentary, I'm like, this guy's going nose to nose with whoever gets this belt. Oh, yeah. I just saw it coming. You had Macklin kind of attack Impact president Scott D'Amore, which caused Aldis to leave commentary. He popped up on this week's Impact, let it be known that his eyes are on the main prize. I think this Cornerstone pay-per-view of Slammiversary is a good move for Aldis. And the interesting thing here, though, is that it's coming out that he's not officially signed. PW Insider is reporting that it's kind of a short-term verbal agreement that has him involved in the world title picture. And maybe this is just kind of testing the waters before he signs a long-term deal. But the fact that it's just kind of a short-term verbal agreement, Slammiversary's scheduled for July, I wouldn't be shocked if he would somehow find his way on that all-in card. Who knows? You know, if he wins that title at Slammiversary, and we know AEW and Impact has worked together before to the effect of the world title. You know, Kenny Omega held that Impact World Championship. Christian Cage held that championship. So who's to say AEW is like, hey, we want to feature a lot of world champions. Aldis is from the UK. Let's bring him on the card. Who knows? I'm not saying that's where they're going to go, because I do think they want to lean heavy on their own talent. I don't think it wants to just be a showcase for all these other companies' talent. But I wouldn't be shocked if we see a Will Ospreay or a Nick Aldis find their way somehow, some way onto that card. But back to Aldis, I'm really excited to see a top tier guy sign with a company other than WWE or AEW.
Yeah, it's really good to see the third option out there. And like we said, the ability to be who he is, that he's honed that craft on NWA and get more eyes on it. And it's not, it's a jump up from NWA's audience. So I think being on Impact and being featured on AEW sporadically and having some of that crossover fandom, you will have Nick Aldis getting a little bit more exposure, and deservedly so. He's such a talented guy. And like I said, world champion personified. And it really, we've seen the trend in wrestling the last few months is just handshake deals, and guys are working on these. We heard the Moxley thing where he worked the whole summer on a handshake deal with Tony Khan. And it seems like this is a short-term verbal agreement that they're going to do business together. This is the way. It just shows the way of the wrestling business leverages in the talent's hands. And that's a good thing for everybody involved, that these guys can kind of stake their claim about where they want to go and set their terms, instead of saying, we're only a few years removed from WWE locking down the whole world prior to AEW and then making them sign non-competes. And you have 90 days. I think we're moving in a direction where the talent is really guiding this, similar to the NFL developing a players union and all that stuff to get these guys workers' rights, healthcare, all that stuff. So this is a short little anecdote thing that I feel like Nick Aldis is paving the way for betterment of future Impact guys, but also AEW and WWE.
100%. And, if we're not going to if we're nowhere near close having a wrestlers union, where they can kind of negotiate a players union for pro wrestlers, if we're not edging towards that, the next best thing is for wrestlers to be able to control their own destiny and work with these kind of short-term handshake deals and float between companies. You're seeing Nick Aldis do it. You're seeing Matt Cardona do it. A lot of these guys get to kind of pick and choose where they want to go. I think it's great. And Aldis, we mentioned that he was with TNA / Impact before, and it wasn't just like a cup of coffee. The guy was there from 2008 to the summer of 2015. And then he even had like a brief little run in 2017 when they did the GFW era, the Global Force era. And he even popped up while he was still under contract with Billy Corgan's NWA in 2022 for a couple spots. So this is a company he's seemingly comfortable with. Now, I know there were reports that sometimes I guess Nick can be hard to work with from a booking angle, but I've always heard that it's just because he stands up for what he wants and he's not just going to take what they give him. And within reason, I kind of respect that. It's your business. You are an independent contractor. You have to stand for something with the direction of your character, especially when you're somebody who's been a world champion in major promotions. You got to kind of do that.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Nick Aldis is we're going to watch him continue to help Steve Macklin and develop the character. And Steve Macklin was presented like $1 million on Impact, the Impact following Rebellion as the champion. So yeah, I mean, the thing I want to tie back into, you mentioned All In and that big event coming up and potentially Impact and AEW working together, but don't forget, first ever All In. It wasn't the main event, but for the world title, the NWA Championship, a huge moment was Cody beating Aldis on that stage. And I don't know if that event has the same appeal, bringing some casual fans in, because admittedly so, I was watching for a guy like, Kenny Omega and Pentagon Jr., but I was also watching for Cody Rhodes fulfilling that destiny to win the NWA Championship, because that brought me in. And that's also kind of the draw you can bring in. He was part of the first All In. So it could all tie together, but I'm just happy to see him working in Impact, because I think this is the best place for him to continue that grind towards being another world champion. He can bring some more prestige, even though, let's just say, the Impact Championship has been very prestigious. Alexander has done a great job with it. Steve Macklin makes it feel important, the presentation of it. And gone are the days where they would give it to a guy like Magnus before they're ready. It seems like it's holding a lot of prestige now. And it's kind of, it's beautiful poetry to see him come back and potentially be challenging and winning it.
Yeah, it's good for the Impact brand, because I always really enjoy seeing promotions have these kind of marquee guys, and they go out and do their own thing for years and they come back, because I think every company deserves to have those returning heroes of the past return. If Cody were to ever come back to AEW, that would be AEW's first real, hey, we lost this guy for a while and now he's back. WWE has the ability to do that because they've been there for so long and everyone's came through those doors of Stanford. But for younger companies, it's good to have those guys that you can pull from your history and reintroduce them to your new fans and your loyal fans that's been there forever. It's a good pop for them to see someone return. And real quick, you mentioned it, just where we're talking Impact, I have to give a shout out to two things. One, Steve Macklin. Holy geez, did they revitalize this guy? He was a nobody in WWE. No one was looking at him. And honestly, when he first came into that company, I wasn't really awestruck by it, but they have done an expert job of making this guy feel credible and feel like a champion. Because when he won, when he came out with all those dudes behind him, I was totally bought in. Like, this guy feels legit. And second little shout out, dude, I don't know. I don't have in front of me where exactly Rebellion took place from. I know it was in Canada, but Toronto. That venue could be one of the most beautiful venues I've seen a wrestling show put on. Like AEW, WWE, take notice, put some smaller shows in that place, because aesthetically on my TV, it was popping. It made the event look so special.
Yeah, and that's knowing their limit too, like, and not trying to shoot for the moon with the capacity. And we talk about this all the time with GCW. The venue sometimes makes the event. And I think the fact that it was a smaller, intimate crowd felt like a happening. And that was something to be said about. In the past, Impact would try to run bigger buildings, or even the setup would be very non-unique. And they would have the ability to try to look like WWE light. And they're going completely away from that. And I think they've really thrived in the last couple of years.
Yeah, man, they're hitting their groove. They're like this little engine that could. There've been many times people thought that company was dying. And even when they were in no seat arenas, no one really there, they kept pushing. I don't know where they got their money from to keep that thing afloat, but it all kind of started right before the pandemic, coming off of that Tessa Blanchard, Sami Callihan feud. I feel like they got a little steam. They had all those people kind of jump ship after all the cuts from WWE. They brought in a bunch of new faces. I think it really was a shot in the arm for Impact. And then building people like Josh Alexander after Ethan Page headed to AEW and the North broke up. They've done a really good job of taking people that maybe other companies didn't see the value in, and they really ramped up their roster. And I'm just stoked that Impact feels like they've really got something going that's all their own.
Yeah, and I don't mean this as a slight at all to Impact, but I think AEW introducing themselves as the clear-cut second really let them feel comfortable in that third spot where they didn't have to push themselves outside of their means and give guys the world title that feel like it would have a mainstream buzz. They're able to give it a guy like Steve Macklin, Josh Alexander, that they could actually hone them and create new stars and have a reason to tune into Impact because you want to see guys grow. And it's not just a retirement home similar to, WCW 2000 prior to them going out. Like you mentioned, there was moments where they could have gone sideways and people wouldn't have been shocked. I mean, you look at some of those weird years and like before 2010 with Impact. I mean, there's some bright spots, but you go to the Hogan era and the Foley era, the Ric Flair stuff, it was in bad shape. It was wrestle crap stuff. So how they turned this around and figured it out and changed everything, I'm here for it. And I think Impact is doing a great job.
It's great. They've got, their homegrown, they're kind of revitalizing people like Macklin, like Josh Alexander. Then you've got the Impact nostalgia acts with bringing Bully Ray back into the fold, bringing Nick Aldis back. And then low key, I think the biggest secret in the room is Impact has low key had one of the best, if not the best women's division in pro wrestling. And they're finally getting the love. So loving to see Impact just kind of firing right now.
With that being said, you want to get into story number 2?
Let's do it.
Big story 2.
Big story number 2. We mentioned the demise of WCW, and it's not because of this guy. This guy had it at the hottest peak, as we're talking about in 1998. Belcaster and I just talked about Goldberg win the title on Nitro in front of all those fans in the Georgia Dome, but he wants his retirement tour. And the interesting part about this is, of course, a guy like Bill Goldberg, feels like he's given a lot to the business. He's a big star. He wants to send off, and I'm sure he's watching a guy like Great Muta get his flowers. We hear Sting about to get his flowers. We've seen guys like Stone Cold get in the ring and Triple H, Undertaker, so on and so forth. He never got it. But the interesting part that I took from this, that speaking of handshake deals, he agreed to wrestle Roman Reigns in Saudi Arabia, which is his last match to date, where he was choked out decisively by Roman Reigns, and it was another little pelt on Roman's belt. And Goldberg was saying that apparently a handshake deal was in place where he would get his retirement match, and it never happened, and he's mad about it. So now he wants to do this self-promoted retirement tour where he thinks he can get people to come out and see, and maybe he can, maybe he can't. But there's a lot to unpack here. First off, as a WCW guy, you are a resident WCW guy. Does a guy like Goldberg deserve something like that, or should he? Is WWE in the wrong for not honoring him that way?
If they shook his hand and told him that he would get that retirement match, WWE's in the wrong. Do I think personally Bill Goldberg deserves it? My personal bias, I was never a Goldberg guy. But having said that, you can't take away this guy's run in 98. I mean, he was one of the hottest things in WCW. Like I would say he was probably the last hot thing WCW had before it went off the rails. So I think they did a lot of disservice to him, and the way it was booked towards the end, it all kind of fell apart. But when he was in the middle of that streak, dude, he crowd was popping. There's a reason that Goldberg chant is there. That started in WCW. The guy deserves maybe a send-off. But I just wonder, how do you package that? If this is a self-promoted thing, like, are you building a card around you? Are you partnering with another smaller promotion to try and see this through? I don't think by himself can garner enough attention for people to tune in just for that. I feel like he's going to have to saddle up to a promotion, and I'm really worried. I hope Tony Khan isn't seeing dollar signs and picking up WWE scraps. I don't think it's AEW's place to give him that final match. There's no history there at all. I know they try to be like a pseudo new WCW in some ways. I don't want to see that in AEW under their banner. I just don't think it fits. This is par for the course with WWE. Look at the way they handled Kurt Angle.
Oh,
They
yeah.
gave him all sorts of promises, and the guy jobs out to fucking Baron Corbin. I mean, I'm not shocked they did this to Goldberg, but it leaves me wondering, like, is this just sour grapes from Goldberg, and now he's popping off at the mouth and saying, "Well, I'll just do it myself. I'll just take care of this myself." I don't. Can you do it by yourself, dude? Like, can you? I don't know if I buy that. Maybe I wouldn't. I know he has no ties to Impact, but I would rather see an Impact Wrestling or even New Japan take the spectacle match of it all and do something with him rather than AEW. AEW just feels like they already get enough heat for being WWE light or riding the coattails of WWE. I don't want to see them try and cash in on this.
So the way I look at the retirement matches and the farewells we've seen, especially the most recent example, Great Muta. With Great Muta, his impact in the ring was huge, but even bigger is his impact out of the ring and how helping the younger generation. It can go the same way with Sting, and you can go the same way with Triple H.
Yep.
Same thing with Undertaker. I can't say that Goldberg has done enough for the younger generation in the future of wrestling, except for the
He's
Goldberg
done
brand,
nothing.
deserving of that. So I think in a lot of ways, yeah, you were a draw in '98, but also, you know who else was a draw? Scotty 2 Hotty was selling out MSG. So it's just like, it is what it is. Wrestling is and at the end of the day, Vince owes you nothing. He may have shook your hand, but he owes you nothing because you were part of WCW, and WCW is now a memory, and he owns the rights to it. And if he wants to bring you in, you took on the role as this mercenary, similar to Brock Lesnar, coming in and just doing business and all that stuff, and your character be damned, and that's fine. And I think he's worse off for it and I think Lesnar's the only guy that has the Teflon skin to almost endure that image. I almost think it adds to the Lesnar lore, but with Goldberg, it's worse. Like, I think back to the matches he had. The match with Taker sticks out in my mind, and all the bad moments and stuff like that. So piece of me says, like, I think it will happen. And I think, like you said, a smaller promotion will tie their ship to it. And I really hope it's not Tony Khan. We know he's a WCW kid. So Tony, if you're listening, there's a certain sect of the fan base that would be very upset if they saw that happen. And I don't think it has a place in an AEW ring. We mentioned the top heaviness of the roster and how talented everybody is. We're going to make room for a guy with the ego and the star of Bill Goldberg. I mean, we're past that at this point. And I think maybe if Goldberg stayed away from, say, he came in 2004 and the last match he had was WrestleMania 20. We haven't seen him in 15 years, 19 years, 20 years. I think maybe you have something on your hands. But the fact, like I said, you've come in and take the shine off Goldberg. The mystery's gone. He's gone and worked all these dates for this huge amount of money with WWE. Nobody really cares anymore.
And what's he won out of this? Is he wanting a win? Is he wanting to go out on his shield and put a guy over? What's a retirement match look like in the eyes of Bill Goldberg?
And who do you team him? Like, who do you pair him with? Because a lot of these other guys talk about Great Muta's opponents and Ric Flair's last match and Taker, all that stuff. Who's Goldberg's lengthy opponent? Like, Sting and Flair.
Right. Like, who does he have? I don't see anyone. And honestly, like, WWE does make the most sense for this type of match. They own the rights to his history. They're going to be able to send him off the best way with, video packages if they want to do that. With Triple H now in charge, that seems like a very Vince move. And I'm sure if Vince wanted it to happen, it would happen. But I just don't know what Goldberg sees in this. Like, with it's one of those tricky things, man, where when a legend is going out, you always hear, you go out on your shield, you put the next guy over, and you go out on your back. That's how wrestlers give back to the business. I don't see Goldberg as a give back to the business guy. I think there's a little ego. There always has been, and every wrestler has ego, but with Goldberg, it was a little different. It's almost like he bought into the hype more than what was there, because sure, he was over, but that died in WCW. He was never truly I feel like he never hit the Paramount peak in WWE that he had in that 98 run in WCW. So
Yeah, no.
I think he got high on his own supply a little bit, and he needs to pump the brakes and really have a come to Jesus meeting in the mirror with himself and be like, okay, what can I do? Because if you're just wanting to buck the system and feel like you've been wronged by the handshake deal gone awry from Vince McMahon, you need to really look at, like, you don't want to go out there having these half-assed goodbye matches. You know, Ric Flair is a testament to that. I think, unlike Goldberg, Ric Flair earned the right through blood, sweat, and tears to do whatever he wanted to do. Goldberg, when I think of him, I don't think of a guy who gave his blood, sweat, and tears to this business. He always felt like a guy who came in hot and then just kind of used the business a little bit. And let's be honest, man, we can talk about, oh, this handshake deal didn't work out for the guy. They put the belt on this dude not too long ago. He beat Bray for the belt.
He's also in the Hall of Fame. He got his moment. So, dude,
exactly. Like,
on.
What else do you need, man?
Yeah, and they're talking not just one show. They're talking about, and I know Muda got 2 shows, one for Great Muda and one for his shoot name, but they're talking a 4-city tour. I mean, that's what Goldberg's alleging that he wants to do. I just don't see enough interest for people to go city to city. Maybe if you run Atlanta, his hometown, maybe you can get a decent enough crowd. But I mean, is he going to be willing to be like, all right, we're going to do a smaller building and be able to run what is by all intents and purposes, an indie show with his last match after being a guy whose peak moment was jackhammering Hulk Hogan in the middle of the Georgia Dome with 41,000 people screaming like that? I don't know. I just think this is also the not karma, but like, this is what happens when you take the money from the Saudi deals and you come back out of retirement and you do these one-time deals because it pays a lot of money. You pay for this. Your legacy pays for it. And this is what happens when you go out there and you don't care about the longevity of your image. It's just about making money right then. And unfortunately for him, people are not going to remember a lot of what he did good in the business. They're going to remember that Undertaker match. They're going to remember the shitty Braun Strowman match. They're going to remember, you know, I mean, yeah, he did let Drew McIntyre win, of course. He had that match, he had that program with Dolph Ziggler. Was Dolph better for it? Who knows? Roman did choke him out, but like, is Roman who he is now because of Goldberg? No. So it's like, we'll see what happens and we'll see if there's enough interest. But I would hardly doubt that his image of what it looks like and what it would be, definitely there's a complete divide.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, he's 56 years old, and you know, he's quoted as saying, "I don't believe I'm hanging them up." So anything and everything is an option. And he says he's going to go on, you know, the world tour, promoted himself. I think that's bait. When I hear that, I think that's putting bait out there for other promoters to bid on him. I do think this sounds like something that New Japan would jump all over, just to be like, you know, they're into those big freak show matches. They'll have a great card and they'll have some crazy match on there. I could see that before I see AEW, but there is that little bit of me. It's like Tony Khan seeing dollar signs. I don't want any part of that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. He does still look really good for 56 years old, and you know, maybe WWE gets that itch again, and they finally give us Goldberg versus Stone Cold for whatever reason, because Stone Cold looks amazing. You know, WWE's the Saudi princes are asking for it to sit on their couches at ringside.
Yeah,
give us Goldberg and Austin while we can.
yeah.
And we all suffer for it. But let's get to the third big story here.
Let's do it.
Big story 3.
You thought you're getting out of this episode without us talking about CM Punk. Of course we're talking about CM Punk, and it's a kind of a mashed up story here. And I think let's start with the Dax part of this, him ending the FTR podcast after only 17 episodes. They did a really good episode, which I wasn't listening to all the shows consistently. I would pop in and out and check him out. He did a really good job of being candid and honest and all that. I listened to the anxiety episode, so shout out to Dax for shining some light on what is not talked about often enough and dealing with anxiety and anxiety attacks and all that goes into that. So him making that normalized for someone of his stature and tough guy persona to look past it. I loved it. But after this episode, him and Matt Kuhn had said, that's it. They pretty much summarize, and there's quotes here, but we could just talk about it out loud without reading them, that he feels like they were hurting the wrestling business by doing this. And he wants to leave the wrestling business in a better shape than when he came into it. And the podcast from his perspective wasn't doing that.
Yeah, I was a big fan of his podcast. I thought he was very candid, shockingly candid on some like booking decisions in AEW. To hear a current roster member talk about things he didn't like, things he liked, he wasn't playing fan service to Tony Khan and blowing smoke. I mean, if he didn't liked it, he was saying he didn't liked it. And there was an element of it where I thought when I would hear him talking about, say, the way they booked the Pinnacle, in my head, I'm like, how is this not getting heat? And that's why I think some fans out there did kind of bite on maybe he's leaving AEW, because he was being so upfront about things that you question, like, how could Tony Khan let him sit and talk about the backstage stuff like this? I know kayfabe's dead and everyone's talking about it, but a lot of these big podcasts, it's all former wrestlers who have left. Very rarely do you see someone on a roster talk as openly as Dax was. And I think a lot of fans appreciated the candidness of his conversations on there. Although I was bummed that he hung it up, I wasn't shocked, because I'm sure he had fans in the locker room that were totally supportive of him doing that, because he wasn't throwing people under the bus per se. But at the same time, I think with everything going on with Punk and the Elite and all the backstage shit you hear about Andrade and Sammy and Kingston, all of the locker room drama 6, 7, 8 months ago that everyone was talking about, I think there was an element of Dax being like, look, I don't want this to add any type of bad feelings in this company. Like you said, he wants to leave the business better than he found it. And I wasn't shocked by it, but I was like, oh man. But like Sneed said on the flagship, like, at least he knows this is retirement. 4 or 5 years, when I hang it up, I can do this then.
Yeah, put the bookmark in it, and he has definitely a good. He showed that he's really, really good at it, and he has the knack for it. So, but let's get into the big part of this. And CM Punk's AEW return may or may not be taking place at the same venue where his career for the promotion began, and that is in Chicago. Obviously, the United Center. They sold out on a rumor. Maybe they're going to sell it out on another rumor. Saturday, June 17th. Obviously, things are not finalized. There's obviously the issue that something else could arise and throw another wrench in between the bike spokes and send us all losing our front 2 teeth. But right now, it seems like they're locked in for this June 17th Collision show, where CM Punk will be a huge focal point, if not the focal point of the show. And I pulled out some stuff from the newsletter, and I'm not sure if you read the full newsletter yet, but there was a very interesting thing about the money to be made here in this, because this deal that they're getting, and if it's contingent on Punk, it shows the motivation for Tony Khan has to be, it's a no-brainer for us to get here and do that.
50 million, right?
Yeah, so this is what Meltzer wrote. The reality is, from a business standpoint, if AEW is getting only what WBD usually pays for first-run program for its show, and Punk is at least a part in getting the deal, he said, I'm not saying the Punk deal is something they had to make, but it's a deal that every single promoter in the history would have tried to make. If AEW only makes what Discovery has been paying for the first show runs, which is general rule of $500,000 per hour in general is what Discovery pays for the first run, that's $52 million per year, and that's game-changing financial deal for AEW. So he uses this as live programming. It's consistent programming, so there's precedent set that AEW should get this money in place, if not more money, because they are giving a lot more as far as consistency. And you're going to get 2 hours of jam-packed action because it's scripted. But goddamn, and you're behind closed doors. All people are like, yeah, he's a dick. Yes, he's done bad things, but if Warner Brothers is saying there, here's the deal, pen to paper, but we want Phil Brooks back in here, it's like, you got to make it work.
You have to. And that's money that even if you have an issue with Punk and you're on the roster, if your company's bringing in $52 million extra dollars, and this isn't WWE where they've been around forever and they're signing these $500 million deals, $52 million extra dollars for AEW is big. That can go towards talent, that can go towards production, that could go towards more touring. I mean, it's a big chunk for a company that is growing like this, especially entering into a contract year, a television rights deal that they're waiting to see what's going to become of that. I don't know if you saw it. I believe his name's Brandon Thurston, who does all the economic wrestling stuff on Twitter.
Yep.
There was some AI generated prediction thing that predicted that AEW would have a major increase re-signing with WBD. So if the AI is correct, having 3 shows, well, 4 if you count All Access, and they launched this Collision, I think this is a long game too. I don't think this is necessarily them just thinking about TBS and TNT. I think this is also them thinking about properties that can attract people to a streaming service down the line. I really think a streaming service is on the way, and I think they view being the sole owners of AEW content would be a major piece of bait to lure in fans to subscribe to a HBO Max or whatever it's going to be.
So Meltzer continued, one person outside the company has seen correspondence indicating that WBD definitely wanted him back, and other things that have happened in recent weeks, very much behind the scenes, have indicated to us that Punk being back, if nothing else, is very significant in everything. So he's a huge piece of this. They want him back and find a way to make it happen. And they're just saying, make it happen, guys. If it has to do a brand split, or you have to do a kumbaya meeting and everyone has to sing songs to each other, whatever it takes to get that money, the influx into AEW is game changing. It's absolutely something they need to do if they want to continue to grow as a business model.
I have to say, out of all of the scenarios and situations that have been bandied about from fans and journalists with this whole CM Punk thing, the thing that troubles me the most is this idea of a brand split over one guy. I don't think that's the right move. That being said, I don't know if I'm buying it's going to be this hard, fast split. Until I see it, I don't buy that. And another thing with all these fans, I'm seeing people say that a brand split like this could be the death of AEW. Pump your brakes. It's not going to end the company, guys. I mean, you're buying into this like doomsayer shit that is propagated online by the IWC. I don't think something like that. Tony knows, man. He does listen to the fans. He knows that a vast majority of fans do not like the brand split in WWE. I don't think he wants to split his roster because Tony, if you watch the way the man books his shows, the one thing he likes is the freedom to be able to book the matches fans want to see. Even if it doesn't mean story attached to it, he likes to be able to have his toys and play with them and match them up. I just can't see him being like, okay, you guys over here and you over here, and we're never going to cross-pollinate. I think the only thing where that comes into play is the Elite and Punk. But outside of that, I don't see anyone being entertained with, I don't want to work with that guy. Let's put him on this show and put this guy on this show. I'm just not buying that. What do you think about that, Ace? Like, what do you think about the brand split possibility?
I hate the idea of it, but I just think that there's too many egos involved to keep this from being a disaster. If you are going to get these guys on 2 different ships and 2 different crews, eventually they have to come together. And point in case, AEW is going to be back in Chicago, the Go Home show before Forbidden Door. So what do? You keep Punk off the Dynamite of the Go Home show? Like,
can you see a world where CM Punk never shows up on their flagship show Dynamite? Come on.
Makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
I just think if you're going to have him come back, and I think at this point it seems inevitable, you have to sit everybody down and say, this is a business. And I understand things have happened in the past and he needs to make amends and everybody needs to make amends. And like we said, you don't have to get along. But I think what needs to stop is this subtweeting, the social media frenzy.
Yep.
That's what's just fueling the fire. And the fire has never really, it's like a forest fire out of control. It has never quite gone out. It's like consistently spreading to different areas of the forest because you're not stopping at its source. Everyone keeps allowing it to happen by fanning the flames of drama because we're talking about it. That's
it's
the
like
Sean Ross Sapp stuff, the Dave Meltzer stuff. We subscribe to it. That's what pays it. So I get it, but going back to the brand split, I don't think it will work because it's just like you said, it's a band-aid on a bullet hole because you are not addressing what is really the issue. Because if it's not CM Punk, it's somebody else. There's an issue in that locker room with handling conflict. And if it's going to, this is not the first and only conflict you're going to have. Unfortunately, there's going to be other things that go down that may be worse than the CM Punk scenario. And you have to find a way to navigate it because if you can't just make a third show because other guys don't want to work together. You have to find a way to get them together.
This to me, I've said it from the moment Brawl Out happened. This is the first true test of leadership in AEW where Tony has to prove that he can handle this situation in a way that one is good for the company. It's going to help the company grow. And two, it's not going to tear your locker room apart by making that decision. So you don't have to have one without the other. It's just, you have to get everyone in a room because I do think Punk being in this company without the drama is good for the company. It's you just have to have him there and kill that other shit, man. You have to put him on a leash I don't even want to say put him on a leash because he needs to be who he is because that's why fans love him. Let's be honest. There's a sect of fans out there that love that side of Punk. You just have to, like you said, get everybody in a room, man. Have a powwow. They've been talking about this meeting. The last thing I read said the meeting hasn't happened yet, but it's still on the table. Everything I've read is saying it's Jericho and Punk and FTR are acting as mediators. So they're kind of a bridge between two people, and there's supposedly other people that will be involved in the meeting as well. Tony Khan will obviously be there, but I hope that meeting builds a bridge, not only with the people in the room, but I hope this is a way for us to finally move towards some sort of working reconciliation between the people that made All Elite, and that's the Elite, and the hottest free agent they've ever signed in the company's history. Like, you look at the numbers. Punk, any segment he was on, top segment. Pay-per-view rating, like everything he did, he brought value to this company. But you got to have the Elite too, man. I was never one of these people. It's like, get rid of them, keep them. I always wanted everyone there because I felt like Punk does seem like he fits. The anti-establishment, fight the man. Like, it felt like it was this perfect little union, but then he showed, his true colors like he sometimes does. And I think it bummed a lot of fans out that this is how it went down. Because even you, Ace, like when he first came into the company, before any negative shit, how were you feeling about Punk being in AEW?
I was excited. I mean, it was awesome. I remember the moment where I was actually on a trip to Colorado, and we were at a steakhouse, and everyone had their phones out watching it live as it happened. And it was a moment in time that I thought it would be great. It was like the second coming of, we talk about WCW. This was true competition to an alternative to WWE, where we finally were getting our voices heard. It just sucks the way it went down. But I think even for wrestling fans, even if you're not a fan of Punk and you're not someone that is going to support him anymore, buy shirts, buy merchandise of any kind, that's okay too. You don't have to, and boo him out of the building. Reactions. So as long as everybody can get in the ring and AEW can be reputable and you don't have to deal with the circus that all goes around this, because I want wrestling to prosper, and I want wrestling to be in a good place where it doesn't deal with this kind of chaos that makes them look lesser than. And not that WWE never dealt with it. It's just, it feels different because WWE has years and years built up of this reputation where when AEW does it, everyone's just like, see, told you so. They're not as good. And that sucks because they've done so much good faith and building that such a good reputation building up to this that it all came crashing down, but they're getting back to that point. So if Punk comes back, it even shows it's a good opportunity. Like you said, test of leadership. This is an opportunity to show you can overcome adversity and you can work through issues and be better for it. Now you calloused up, man. Let's now next time something like this happens, Tony Khan is more equipped to handle it in a much better fashion.
Yeah, these are the things that, 10 years from now, when Tony's pushing 50 almost, and he's got 15 years of running a promotion under his belt, these are one of those things he can look back on and be like, man, we got through that. Think of all the things Vince got through. The steroid scandal, almost being ran out of the business by Ted Turner.
Almost being in jail. Like he was literally about to go to jail.
Exactly. Like think of the things that guy had to juggle. That
Chris
is
Benoit, the screw job.
Yeah, all of that, all the
Owen
wrestler
Hart.
deaths, so many things. And it cracks me up because fans are so short-sighted. Like Vince has always had it under control. Dude, he has fought the government. He has fought the Benoit thing was like a black mark on the business for a long, long time. All of the things he's had to endure, it wasn't easy for Vince to get to where he is to sell to Endeavor. Like he had to fight and claw his way to that. And this is the first real piece of adversity that we've seen a young promoter face. It's like, dude, there's going to be more things coming. This isn't the end. This is just the first big one that kind of shook the honeymoon phase out of AEW. Like, oh shit, this isn't the perfect oasis. Things can go wrong in the locker room. Dude, more things are going to go wrong. There's going to be way more. And this is that point where it's like, we're still waiting to see if Tony can get it under control. Like, and I think he's done a pretty good job. And I think he's got 3 guys there at his shoulders that are ready for battle, and that's Moxley, Jericho, and Danielson. I think they're really with him in this right now. And hopefully, I just want everything to be great in pro wrestling. I just want the best products. And when you look down that roster and you see those names, I mean, when you see a Jericho, Moxley, Punk, those are marquee names.
Yep.
You take any of those names off the board, you lose a lot, especially with an AEW. You don't have this revolving door of legends that you can kind of reach back into your pocket and pull out like WWE. WWE has had so long to build their roster that losing a marquee guy that has name value with the casual fan, that's a huge hit for AEW. So I think them trying to work Punk in, it makes all the sense in the world. Critics be damned, but it's got to work, man. You can't bring him in and it be a poison to the locker room. So I'm waiting on pins and needles to see how this Jericho, FTR, Punk, Tony Khan powwow goes down. That's what I'm waiting on.
So he tried his hand of assimilating himself back into the WWE locker room, allegedly, because he showed up to Raw in Chicago tonight.
This is breaking news.
Yeah, he showed up to Raw in Chicago tonight, and apparently he was saying hi to people. Him and Paul Levesque went face-to-face for the first time since 2014. Got word to the big dog, Vince McMahon. He got a call, and he was escorted out of the building to leave, and he left, obviously, on his own volition. No conflict, anything like that. He was just saying hi to some friends there. I don't want to get into a big debate about this, but what's your take on him doing something like that? Is that just good faith? I want to see some of my friends that are there. I want to see Cody or whoever, or is this just him being, for lack of a better word, a troll?
Gut knee-jerk reaction, troll. When has this dude ever wanted to go to WWE to see his friends? Like, when has that? Maybe he's in a new headspace, but that place has been scorched earth outside of his little FS1 show he had with Renee where he'd pop up once a month. Who's he going to see there? You know, Seth Rollins, we covered it on this show. Seth Rollins buried that dude in an interview like twice over, a couple months ago. And there's a lot of people I'm sure that like him there. I think he was really good friends with Kofi, I believe.
Yep.
I'm sure there's people there that he would love to see. But that Triple H don't want to see him. You know that I would love to have been a fly on the wall when they found out he was there. Oh, like, why is he there though? It seems like, what are you doing, dude? Are you putting heat on Tony?
And
I don't
let
think
him in though. Like,
Yeah,
why is he able to get in? You don't have a credential. I know you're CM Punk, but
it's Chicago. He's the fucking mayor of Chicago, essentially.
who let him in? Like, that person should, like, you don't work here.
Well, the guy who let him in should have been the guy to open the door when the DX was at WCW. It should have been, if they let him in, why didn't they let in DX at Nitro?
Yeah, by that credential, Triple H used to work there. God damn it.
Yeah, exactly.
Terra Ryzing used to work there.
When Bellcaster sent us the message, did you guys hear about Punk showing up at Raw? I was like, what the hell's going on now? I was like, we were getting somewhere. He's got a due date in AEW. And then I read in it and everyone's saying that it's legit. Alvarez, Meltzer. I'm like, what? I don't know, man. It just seems weird.
Well, the Blackhawks were bad this year. I guess he had to keep himself busy with all the drama, but
he's
we got Sneed in the chat. Thanks for, and apparently he's doing a run-in. So he was driving near your house, honking the horn. So is that what he was doing?
I did hear a horn. You made it on the stream, Sneed. If that was you in the alley, I heard you.
All right, let's do the quick hitters and get into some of the news, especially with this WWE Endeavor stuff.
Yeah, let's do it.
Quick hitters.
All right, so some quick hitters. WWE, they're expected to make some cuts. So we got some releases potentially happening. And Nick Khan used the word aggressive when describing the cut. So he said, if you look at what Endeavor was able to take out cost-wise from UFC in 2016 or shortly after the deal was done, we have the same expectation here. We think 50 million is a really conservative number. We have integration teams now. We're going to get those in shape. This was done on Light Shed Partners, an interview done with Nick Khan. If you're into business speak podcasts, Light Shed is your potential to listen to Nick Khan drone on and on. But dude, 50 million. And the bottom of this, obviously, because it doesn't read as well as talent being released. There's been a lot of talk about the cutbacks being behind the scenes where we're not going to see it, but you will feel it. I think if you start making enough cuts, you're going to start feeling it.
Yeah. And this is it's going to be part of anytime there's a buyout, they're going to consolidate power. They're going to consolidate positions. They're going to see what's needed, what's not, where the overlap is on certain job duties and things of that nature. So I think that's just the natural progression of being bought out and having your infrastructure kind of put under a microscope. So that makes sense to me. I think it's funny that he says 50 million is a really conservative number. So it could be way more than that. Like, I think there will definitely be way more internal things shifted that we won't see or feel initially. And I'm not saying this won't be good. They could shift it. Endeavor has proven they turned UFC into a money-making Goliath. So it's like they could easily come in and shape this up for the betterment of the company. But if you want to have me buy in that this is all going to be internal and behind the scenes and no one on the roster is going to face the axe, come on, dude. They're going to cut some people. It's coming. I mean, they
Carrying
do this.
Cross.
Yeah, oh, exactly.
Braun Strowman.
Exactly. Like these top tier guys. And we have just wrap it into this thing because it relates. Their PW Insider is reporting the paranoia is bubbling in the WWE locker room. They reported that there's been slightly bubbling paranoia among the talents the last few weeks, mainly the wrestlers that Triple H brought back that Vince McMahon cut. So when Vince stepped away from the business, stepped down, Triple H brought back the Garganos, not Gargano, I think his contract just ended, but the Karrion Crosses, the Bray Wyatts, those type of people.
Yep.
And supposedly those talents are real nervous now, especially the ones that aren't being utilized. Like Karrion, I guess you could say he's being utilized. I don't think he's been utilized to his full potential. So I'd be nervous, wouldn't you? I mean, I would be shaking.
You could fold Gargano into that too, whether with the regime or how it ended. He's a Triple H guy that historically, if you look at Vince, he doesn't have a history of being able to see these guys in main event slots, at least not long term. We've seen guys be the outliers like a Bryan Danielson or, him specifically being a main event guy, but it was short lived. You want to talk about longevity? He doesn't put the strap on guys like our Gargano. That's not him. And why would he be? I mean, he has done nothing, even with Triple H in charge. Gargano has done absolutely nothing. And for trimming the fat, it's like, if you want to save $50 million, there's 4 guys right there that are just not being used. So what's the point of them being on the roster?
And there's a lot. It's a weird time in WWE too, because I know everyone, when Dax was on his podcast talking about contract stuff and MJF's doing the bidding war of 2024, everyone's complaining. I wish they wouldn't talk contract stuff and confuse us. It's like, but now WWE's getting a heavy dose of that because you would paranoia in the locker room, cuts are coming. And then you have people like Drew McIntyre and even Becky Lynch going on their social media, blacking out their banners, removing all WWE stuff outside of just their Twitter handle. If anyone who follows sports knows, typically when that happens, when you remove your company name or you black out your banner, everyone's like, oh shit, where are they going? They're leaving the franchise. So I don't know if McIntyre is legit unhappy there. There's mixed reports coming out. A part of me feels like it's all a work. The Becky thing, I almost surely believe it's all a work. So they're starting to toy with fans where you don't know, even Bailey had that cryptic tweet about love affairs ending or whatever she said. There's a part of me, man, I don't know how you feel about this, but there's a part of me, it's like, I love the blurring of the lines. I think this is the new era of kayfabe. Is this legit? Is this a work? But then there's a part of me that gets tired of it, man. I just want to watch my wrestling.
No, I hear what you're saying, and just similar to like we have Punk exhaustion from the story, and there's fatigue in talking about these stories. But I think the only way to make meaningful change is it can't sell, and right now it is selling. It's buzzing. It gets people talking on the internet and gets the company name in people's mouths. So, it's a bad time for WWE to be using that in a work setting because obviously there's a lot of skepticism of this new regime and who's in control and the sale and everything that goes in that and who's not safe and who's not. So it would be interesting to think that Becky and Drew would be doing that if it's done without the blessing of creative. Maybe they are doing it just to do their own, because that is a possibility too.
Right.
Talent for them trolling on people. So yeah, I mean, it is exhausting. There's a level of fatigue to it, Chad. Like I feel very tired about talking about the same stuff over and over again, but you know what? It gives wrestling a new layer. It's created this secondary layer where instead of a 3-tiered cake, now it's 4 tiers. And that 4th tier sometimes gets tiresome.
It gets tiresome. And I don't want to be a little negative Nancy whining around, bitching and complaining. I love it. I do think wrestling is more compelling now than it ever has been in my lifetime. And this is somebody who grew up in the golden age of the late 80s, early 90s, grew up during the Monday Night Wars. Like all of that was great, but there's something about right now that has me, and maybe it's because I'm more mature and we're tapped into what's going on more, but there is a level of intrigue in all this that just keeps me coming back every Monday night with you, Ace, and talking about shit on Wrestling Tonight. That's what we're here to do, is talk about this stuff. But like you said, I would be lying if I said sometimes I'm just like, man, can we just get to the stories on my screen?
It just moves too fast because there's so much good that we just forget and it foregoes because we're not talking about the crazy good matches that we see on a weekly basis. We're talking about the stuff outside of the ring. So I'd be interested to talk to a wrestling fan from like maybe the early 90s to see how they felt, because there was a level of dirt sheet between the hotlines and the early newsletters being
The
delivered, message boards that, that were fueling the fire of their fandom. And if they felt like it was too much too. But like you said, I think wrestling's more dynamic than ever, where you can utilize, and I don't think they've perfected it yet. I think that's the other thing, that they have not perfected using social media as a full-blown mechanism quite yet, but they
100%.
will, and they're going to use it, and they're going to weaponize it against wrestling fans, and it's going to create a new boom period.
They're toying with it, and it always cracks me up to hear wrestling fans, like, because me and Sneed always say nobody hates wrestling more than wrestling fans,
right?
But at the same time, it's like it's always been that way. Everyone wants to pawn this off of like Twitter just makes the worst wrestling fans. It's like, dude, go back in the 90s to the message boards. The same shit was happening. The same people were bitching and complaining about WWF, WCW. It's always been there on a certain level. I'm sure if you went to fucking Dallas, Texas, World Championship,
the Von Erichs are winning again.
Exactly. And you go out in the stands, you're going to have somebody cheering for the Freebirds. You're going to have somebody shitting on Terry Funk's organization out in Texas. Like, it's always been there, guys. It's just now it is so illuminated because we all have the ability to go look at it on Twitter or Instagram.
Absolutely. But let's move on to MLW's Court Bauer saying something else aside from WWE's lawsuit. He was talking, and we have great news about Richard Holiday. Obviously, we talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago that he was coming off of his cancer treatment. He's getting ready to get back in the ring, getting in shape. He had a lot of appeal to him. He was teamed up with MJF back in the day in the Dynasty and Alex Hammerstone. Don't want to forget him. But Richard Holiday, I know you are very familiar with his work and think he could be a huge piece to whoever wants him. I think Impact would be a great spot for him.
Oh, I would love it, man. He could be an MJF type of guy for Impact. I see, Richard Holiday posting pictures. He's back in the gym, getting in there. I think he had a bout with Hodgkin's lymphoma. He successfully beat that for now. Court Bauer said he's a free agent, said he's got a seat warm for him if he ever wants to come back. Holiday confirmed the report that he is a free agent. And even MJF, his former Dynasty stablemate, stepped out on Twitter and said, hey, this guy is the top free agent out there right now. If he's healthy and ready. And here's the thing about Richard Holiday. One, he's sound in the ring, but the best thing, and it's the most rare thing in wrestling, the dude has character charisma for days. I mean, he got over wearing AirPods to the ring. They called him the AirPod God, and it was such a douchey little brushstroke to his character to line him up with MJF. They were the tag champs in MLW, so keep your eye. I have all the best wishes and thoughts going towards Richard Holiday. We had him on the Tavern for Visits the Tavern. Great guy and young and hungry for the business. And I hope, first and foremost, I hope he stays healthy. I hope, everything is well in that neighborhood and he gets back on the road to recovery and signs with someone huge and gets the deal of his dreams. And I'm with you, man. Throw Richard Holiday in that mix, mixing it up with Nick Aldis, Josh Alexander, sign me up.
Absolutely. So Fightful was reporting that Hangman Page is currently working on an AEW contract extension. So they're in progress right now towards a new contract. And we hear this all the time with some of these original contracts are coming up if they haven't expired already with those 4 years, 5-year deals that they originally signed. Now it's time to renegotiate with new stock. And a guy like Hangman has raised his stock significantly since the last time they had probably negotiated a contract. So Page is the same agent as the Young Bucks and also Kenny Omega. So they're also in the process of contract negotiations. I wonder if they're all paired together. Are they a package deal similar to the Radicals back in the day where they want to go together? So if one domino falls, maybe they can keep all of them. But I think right now, a big conversation piece is the CM Punk thing. Is that playing a part in these contract negotiations? And I think a betting person would say, yes, they are. And I think that coming up with safeguards in place about how to create a stable work environment and feeling comfortable at your job and understanding mental health as going and liking showing up to your job, because gone are the days where there's an ignorance to that, where you just turn a blind eye to work being a huge part of your life, and being happy there is a big piece of it. And there was a time in wrestling where that was be damned. Didn't matter. Go show up to work and do your job. You're lucky to have this job. But as we mentioned with the options in wrestling, if you're not happy where you are, why won't you leave? So I think this is a big piece now where Tony has to kind of feed two masters. He has to figure out a way to get WBD happy, keeping Punk in the fold in a big significant way. And he also has to get the Elite, because it's not just Kenny, it's not just the Young Bucks, but it's also Hangman Page, one of your original main eventers that held that world title. And these are very important pieces to AEW's legacy and where they currently stand.
I think Punk is playing a part in this, but I think more so this Hangman contract negotiation is playing an integral part in getting the Bucks and Kenny back as well. Like, those guys, they like to be around people they like. There's a reason why naysayers call it all friends wrestling. They do like hiring people they enjoy to work with. I get that. Who wants to work with assholes all day? And I think signing Hangman, I just don't see the Elite leaving. I truly don't. I think they have, even with Punk there, I think they have a situation that they will never have in WWE. Like, it's just not, they're not going to have control like that. They're going to be under someone's thumb. I think Page resigns. Again, we've talked about this multiple times with like FTR and Tony, not only, handling the Punk situation, and that's showing his meld as an owner and a promoter. Things like this show it too. Things like this show that, hey, this guy I invested 4 years of this company into and building him up, I'm going to retain his services. If every time you build a guy up, he just goes on to greener pastures, that doesn't bode well for your company. So you have to be able to show like, hey, I'm going to shell out the money to keep the guys that I believe in and that I've put time into. He has to re-sign Hangman. I think it's very important.
You don't want to be the Pittsburgh Pirates of wrestling world, where you just build up guys, and once you become a star, they can't re-sign them and retain their services, like you said. So
right.
Hangman's one of the OG guys, and it's important to have legacy guys that, as we continue to build towards getting one of these streaming services and having a whole back catalog of different eras of AEW, when
he's their first homegrown world champion.
Yep.
If you really want to, like, Omega had his run in New Japan, Mox, obviously, WWE, Jericho, goes without saying. Hangman was the first quote unquote young guy built in the consciousness of the wrestling fan in AEW. I know he did Ring of Honor, but come on.
He was also at the, it was a big part about All In. He was a big piece to announcing at the press conference in Jacksonville, where you had Jericho showing up. And when they started this whole damn thing, he was a big piece there. So, and I understand if Cody leaves, anybody can leave. So it set the precedent and trailblaze that way. So you can always keep that in the back of your mind. But
I think that was I think people look at that a little harder than they need to. I agree. When Cody left, it was like all bets are off. Anyone can leave. But I think that was just a reminder of the reality of wrestling in general.
Right.
But I do think, like, at his core, Cody was made in WWE. As far as, like, that's where he had ties to that company for a long time. Met his wife there. That he had a lot of ties to that company. He made his bones in AEW and made himself into the star that we see today. But I would be more shocked of the Elite leaving than Cody. I really would.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens at this point. It's got to be stressful for Tony Khan, because he not only has Fulham, he has the Jaguars getting ready for the draft, but he also has, Ring of Honor. He has AEW, he has Collision, he has Dynamite. He has to negotiate these contracts. So he
delegate.
needs to delegate. The word is delegate, Tony Khan. Please, not enough coffee in the world to get you through those things. You need to find a way to delegate.
Yeah.
But we also have Ted DiBiase Jr. in the news here. We're not going to talk too much about this because it is what it is, but the Mississippi welfare scandal that was in the news. But the Department of Justice issued a press release on Thursday announcing that Ted DiBiase Jr. has been charged with 6 counts of wire fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and to commit theft concerning programs receiving federal funds, 4 counts of money laundering, and 2 counts of theft concerning programs receiving federal funds. If he is convicted of this crime, he's going to face a maximum of 20 years in prison for each wire fraud charge, 10 years for each money laundering charge, and 5 years. All told, probably close to 50 years if he's found guilty of all these things. And he also owes a significant amount of money to back after. Obviously, if he gets past these charges, which doesn't seem like he will, and we don't want to pass judgment until he's heard and has his day in court. But it seems like he's a real scumbag. I mean, taking away from people that need that money and needy families in state of Mississippi that fallen on hard times, and that money's been allocated for them to find, whether it be food or shelter or anything to better their lives. And you got this guy who, was born on second in a lot of ways and acts like he hit a double. So
I believe this is the
not a good
same
look.
lawsuit that Brett Favre is tied up in too.
Yes.
So
Yep.
I mean, you never I want to know when it gets into federal government money, federal funded money being laundered, or there's so many moving pieces and hands exchanging money and backroom deals. You wonder, was he abreast to the severity of what he was doing, or was he hoodooed into something that he didn't realize? That before I pass judgment, because these are big claims. Like you said, Mississippi, man, is not some flourishing state. It's predominantly on the bottom half of 50 in poverty and stuff like that. Like the state I live in is the same way. We're a very poor state. So when you're taking money out of the mouths of families that may need that in a poor state, it makes you look like you said, an absolute scumbag. But did he know? Was he knowingly doing this, knowing he was taking money from these families, or was he under the assumption of something else? It's something to watch to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, I mean, he's right now being accused of using those funds for 2 nonprofit organizations, and he used them to give them sham contracts to various businesses, and then he apparently used it to purchase a boat, a car, and then make a down payment on a house. But again, these are the accusations. He'll obviously have his chance to plead his case that it's not as it seems, but right now, the $1 Million Man's son is in deep water, and all because of, ironically, IRS. So it's hard not to make the joke, but dude, very, very troubling times. And to look at the 2 guys in the legacy, Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase Jr., 2 paths of, it's a cautionary tale to make good choices.
Dude, man, when the legacy was happening, I thought Ted DiBiase Jr. was going to be a future star. Orton, Rhodes, DiBiase Jr. I was like, man, all 3 of these guys are the future of the business. And then DiBiase just kind of left the business. So this is something interesting to watch. I know Brett Favre's tied up. He's suing fucking Pat McAfee for reporting on this news. And there's all sorts of stuff going on, even outside of Ted DiBiase Jr. Brett Favre tied up in it. It's a mess down in Mississippi. So
speaking of money, I think she got a lot of it here. Mercedes Moné signed a contract extension with New Japan Pro Wrestling and Stardom. So this got a little bit of confusion because she said she's worked her last date with Stardom. That might be kayfabe because of her, and we'll talk about it in a second, losing the championship this weekend. But Moné and Bushiroad agreed to an extension of her current contract just hours before Stardom's All-Star Grand Queendom event. Despite the extension, Moné lost the IWGP Women's Championship to Mayu Iwatani on April 23rd. Only 64 days of a reign. And there's right now no word on how long it is. Like I said, it could be a short-term deal. It could not be a deal at all. But it seems right now that she's still someone they really target as we want to build our women's division around.
Yeah, and she came out recently and said she was moving to Japan. So, I mean, it looks like she's settling in for the long haul. If she's re-signing, who knows how long it is. I don't feel the steam behind this, though. You know what I mean? I don't feel
JERICHO
the steam.
Doesn't feel the same way.
It doesn't feel as big. And honestly, I wonder if she just does this run and then goes back to WWE, was her time away even worth it? I mean, for her, she's getting reps, she's learning new styles. I get it, but it it's not hitting me. It doesn't feel as big to me now.
So at the aforementioned Stardom All-Star Grand Queendom on Sunday, we had all 5 titles that were defended change hands. So this event took place at the Yokohama Arena. Tom Nagano in the main event defeat Julia to win the World of Stardom Championship for the first time, pinning Julia following the violent screwdriver. Mercedes Moné, as I mentioned before, lost the IWGP Women's Champion Mayu Iwatani in the co-main event. We also had other title changes, which we saw Kairi, Saru Anu, and Natsupai defeat Risa Sera, Suzu Suzuki, and Harakagi Kurumi for the Artist of Stardom titles. Miura and Amisure defeated Takahashi and Yu for the Goddess of Stardom tag titles, and Mina Shirakawa defeated Saya Kamatani for the World Wonder of Stardom title. So all titles. Very rarely do you see all titles change hands on an event.
Yeah, it looks like they're shifting. You know, they're planning a new, fresh start, which is exciting for Stardom. Like anytime I see a bunch of title changes, it's like, oh, okay, we're getting some fresh booking here.
Ray Phoenix right now is taking some time off. Colton and I mentioned this on Honor Society, but Meltzer reported the news in this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter saying that he's banged up. This was originally reported by PW Insider. Rumor has it it's a hip injury. We're not sure, but all we do know he's taking significant time off, somewhere in the list of 4 to 6 weeks. So unfortunately, just won those ROH tag titles. They got to wait a little bit, but they tape in bulk, so we may see Ray Phoenix in the algorithm of ROH canon very soon. But he's taking some well-deserved time off to heal his body.
Yeah, you got to take care of your health. It's unfortunate because those titles were sitting dormant, unfortunately, due to Jay's passing, Briscoe, and now they win, and Phoenix is taking time off. But I'm all for health first, man. If you taking 4 to 6 weeks is a blip, if 4 to 6 weeks keeps you wrestling for us for many more years to come, instead of grinding your ass into the dirt and not taking time off, shortening your career, take the time off, Phoenix. We'll be here when you get back.
Speaking of getting your body right, Kurt Angle also had neck fusion surgery. So he was on the Kurt Angle Show podcast released on Saturday. He noted that his recent back surgery helped alleviate some of his pain. He's hopeful that another procedure next year will do the same. He also continued to say that after he had a double knee replacement and back surgery, he's going to be getting neck fusion surgery. Dude's really banged up. And at the end of his run, we talked about as far as retirement matches go with Baron Corbin, he was not presented in the best light. And, it was hard for him to do the things that he used to do. But Kurt Angle at his peak deserves all the flowers. He deserves all the recognition. And it has me thinking, like, he's getting all these surgeries. Obviously, he wants to function in his daily life and feel good without being in constant pain. But if he's going to feel good enough, similar like Stone Cold, he's going to get the itch to come back to the ring again.
Oh, yeah. And I'm pretty upfront about Kurt Angle is one of my all-time favorites, man. Like, if I had a list of 5 people to list Kurt Angle is at the top of the list. I love Kurt Angle. It sucks that the dude's in so much pain. I mean, this goes back before his wrestling career. I mean, he was dealing with this shit. We all know the story. He won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck, so the fact that he had that broken neck and then he went on to have the career in WWE and TNA that he had, I hope he gets some relief. We're on this we've got a few health topics, and I hope he gets fixed up. And if he's fixed up well enough and he gets that itch, I ain't going to lie, I'm going to be excited. I'm going to be real excited to see Kurt back in the ring again.
So speaking of surgery, Thunder Rosa may have to require surgery to get back in the ring. She's been on the shelf right now for about 8 months. She had to relinquish the Women's Championship. She's been the focal point of that hurricane of drama in the women's division in AEW. It doesn't get as much shine as the CM Punk stuff did, but it still was very caustic in the AEW locker room. But it's pushing back her return date even further. I mean, we don't know when the next time we're going to see Thunder Rosa in the ring.
Yeah, I know she's doing commentary for him, and a part of me, I know there's heat with her and the girls in the locker room, but then the way I heard Tony Khan talking on Busted Open about it, how, Britt and Thunder will never get along. And I'm sure he was alluding to a match down the road. And I'm like, is the heat as big as what they're making it seem? Like, I know she's hurt. I trust Thunder that she's hurt. I don't think she's faking it, but I just wonder if they're taking that little bit of drama they had and they're ramping it up for the cameras now to make a match.
So speaking of the women's division, we had Trinity Fatu, who still continues to be a free agent, former Naomi in WWE. She was backstage at GCW's Scene of the Crime, which took place in Orlando, Florida. It's her hometown, similar to CM Punk, just popping through, saying what up to people. Fightful that said they reached out to GCW about her presence. They have not received a response, but probably similar to when Seth Rollins was in Nashville for the GCW event, saying hi to Jon Moxley. I don't think there's much to do about this. She's just curious. She's a wrestling fan, so she's checking it out.
It'd be fucking cool if she did.
It would be awesome.
GCW stuff, though, man. You want to talk about go the Matt Cardona route. Trinity going the Matt Cardona route and getting a little bit of that street cred from having some matches in GCW. I'd be all about that.
We also have the update on the delayed release of Heels Season 2. So according to PW Insider, the delay is due to separation of Lionsgate and Stars into two separate entities. They're trying to determine where the assets go, and the new season of Heels is a casualty of the corporate restructuring. So all the season, 2 episodes are 100% produced and finished, so ready to go whenever things are cleared up. So they're waiting. If you're into Heels, the reality, it's all for you. It's waiting for you.
Dude, I loved Heels because this was a scripted drama, and me and my girlfriend, we watched the first season. I bought Stars just to watch this shit because I knew CM Punk acted in it. I knew Mick Foley popped up in it. It's about an independent promotion, good actors involved. I'm pumped for season 2. Bring it to me, man. I'm tired of waiting. Let's get it going.
Court Bauer also said about MLW that they're going to be going live in 2023. So you mentioned Busted Open before. He appeared on, he being Court Bauer, confirmed that the company plans to broadcast live shows this year. And he said, and I quote, "I can tell you that MLW is going live this year. We're developing a few cool 10th poles, and we are established some such as war games. We're developing a few cool 10th poles. We have established some such as the War Chamber or the Battle Riot or Super Fight. So for us, the next step is adding these supercards to a lineup where you can watch it live worldwide." So that has been a big piece. We talked about ROH's shortcomings being a lot to do with the tapings, and being live, there's something to be said about that. That's how you grow.
That's what separates the big boys from everyone else, in my opinion. AEW going live on Wednesdays, obviously SmackDown Raw going live. If MLW can go live where we can tune in every week. Now, it sounds like right now they're just talking about tentpole events, but if he's talking a weekly live television program, that bumps MLW up past everyone else, in my opinion. A live weekly program is the cornerstone of, okay, you're legit. You are legit. Even Impact tapes.
Yeah, exactly. So a person familiar with live tapings, Tony Chimmel, and he's been working with AEW. And you may know Tony Chimmel as a longtime WWE ring announcer. He was released back with all the furloughs back in 2020. He's been working with AEW just in the back behind the scenes, assisting with production at the company's live events, some of the TV tapings. He's also been appearing on the Monday Mailbag podcast with referee Mike Chioda, and he was sharing some thoughts on that new gig. And it was very nice to hear an outsider talking about what it's like behind the scenes, especially as someone who's not really infused in the culture. He's just there as a bystander and just can see it from like an overhead view. And he said, it's a great place to work, and I love going there. I do it maybe a couple times a month or something. Tony Khan and that whole place is a great place to work. He went on to say they have nice people, a good product. So very nice words from a guy who's been in the business for a long time.
Yeah, it's always nice to hear. And honestly, I did not know Tony Schimmel was working for AEW. That's awesome. I love Tony.
Yeah.
He was always a solid ring announcer, a good person to have in your back pocket. And I know Chioda, he's reffed several matches in AEW too. I would love him to come on full time as a senior referee, but one can dream.
And finally, in the quick hitters, we have the first title defense for the new Impact World Champion, Steve Macklin, has been confirmed to be none other than PCO at next month's Under Siege event that Impact's going to be putting on. This will take place May 26th in Toronto, Canada. Not sure if it's the same venue, but I hope it is. PCO has never held Impact Gold. He beat Eddie Edwards in a last rights match at Rebellion, while Macklin defeated Kushida to win the title. So these two are on a collision course. But this has just first monster in the way, nice little win under your belt to get ready for something bigger. And I'm not disparaging PCO at all, but that's been his role so far. And he's not going to be worse off for it, taking a loss to Macklin. PCO's presentation is kind of suited to take losses and then bounce right back.
And talking about his presentation, Impact has went full in on the French Canadian Frankenstein gimmick. And I love it. The way it's so over the top, but in the best way.
Absolutely. So let's get into the Dave's Raves. I have actually match of the week this week, and I also have performer of the week.
Let's do it.
Dave Raves.
All right, for Dave's Raves, we have a match of the week, and it was Vikingo versus Commander versus Swerve Strickland versus Rich Swann, April 16th from Monterrey, Mexico. So as expected, this is something Meltzer was talking about. Vikingo won the four-way main event to keep the AAA Mega Championship. He's been champ for 500 days. Vikingo pinned Commander, and what he was saying was an excellent four-way that also included Rich Swann and Swerve Strickland. He did mention that Vikingo seemed banged up because all the matches he's been working specifically during WrestleMania weekend. But we got confirmation today that we're going to get Vikingo versus Omega for the title in Tijuana.
Wow.
This coming Triple Mania. So we're going to be seeing that match soon, which has a lot of story told, and it's been built in two different companies. We're supposed to get it before the pandemic, but now we're before Kenny Omega got hurt. So now we're going to get a rematch on a big stage where maybe Vikingo gets his win back, and I'm here for it. But great match, by the way.
Yeah, that all four performers in that match are incredible. And the fact that they announced that match is exciting because it always seems like AEW and AAA are on shaky ground. Like I know Conan and Tony respect each other, but Tony didn't take kindly to Dralistico.
Yeah.
And those dudes beating FTR, especially with him signing and going to WWE. But it's good to see this being lined up because it means, the relationship is healthy.
And we have a performer of the week. It's Aussie Open, and Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher added the New Japan Strong Tag titles to their IWGP Tag titles. And they're looking to set up a match with FTR with the AEW Tag titles on the line. Fletcher said they were going to go for the greatest belt collection in history, obviously alluding to FTR. They also were mentioning being the best tag team in the world right now. The fans were recognizing this, and they chanted for FTR. So we've seen Aussie Open on a run here. That seems like their year. 2022 was FTR's year. Aussie Open feels like it's still early on, but it feels like Aussie Open is on this rise to superstardom, and rightfully so, man. They're awesome.
Yeah, Aussie Open's killing it. I don't see them taking those AEW titles. I feel like FTR's going to hold those bad boys for a while. But who wouldn't want to see that rematch? The first match was incredible.
Yeah, so the match that Meltzer was mentioning before, it was a three-way with Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley and the dream team of Okada and Tanahashi versus Aussie Open April 15th in DC for New Japan Strong event when they won the Strong belts. And then we obviously can go back to their other match with Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi for the IWGP belts from 4-8 at the Sumo Hall. They've just been crushing it, man. And ROH, they've been sorely missed on the tapings. I'm hoping they're coming back soon. But every time they were on our screen for ROH, they've just been amazing.
They're in my top 3 or 4 tag teams right now. I would love to see FTR rematch them. And I'd love to see Chris Bay and Ace Austin mix it up with those guys because they've been killing it too. So.
All right, let's get into the week ahead and preview things that are happening. I think we're a half hour into Raw right now.
Nice.
The week ahead.
All right, for the week ahead, let's start with Raw, and we only have two things announced. So we have Bad Bunny returning to WWE, probably to set up their Backlash match, and Rey Mysterio versus Damian Priest to further set up that tag match that will eventually main event Backlash. Not main event, but the co-main event.
I hate Damian Priest, man. I'm sorry. Like, just can't do it with that guy.
On SmackDown, we have the main event of WrestleMania being rematched here. The tag team championships on the line. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens defend against the Usos, and we also have the start of the WWE draft. So, quick question: you see the Usos potentially winning the titles, or is this just Kevin and Sami getting another win?
I think the Usos probably are going to win these belts because Sami and KO don't do Saudi Arabia, and don't we have Saudi Arabia on the horizon?
Yeah, we do actually. We have Night of Champions coming up soon.
And if it's Night of Champions and titles have to be defended on Night of Champions, it just
do you think
feels
that takes away that win or no? Do you think it takes away? You think that takes away from the win that they had at WrestleMania?
Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely. If the Usos get these titles back, it's like, what the fuck did you do, man? It's that fan service thing. We'll give them what they want right now, but it's not going anywhere. I hate that.
So Backlash is coming up on May 6th. Some of the matches have been announced. We have the Usos and Solo Sikoa versus Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Matt Riddle. Cody Rhodes versus Brock Lesnar. The U.S. title on the line against Austin Theory defending against Bronson Reed and Bobby Lashley, which should be a decent Haas fight there with Bobby and Bronson. I like to see Bronson in that spot.
Yeah.
SmackDown Women's Championship on the line. Rhea Ripley defending against Zelina Vega. And Seth Rollins versus Omos for whatever reason.
Yeah, the Seth Rollins Omos thing is a head scratcher. Zelina Vega seems out of her league for Rhea. I love Zelina, but she seems a little out of her league there. But the Cody Brock, I know everyone, it's the obvious one for me. That match is very intriguing to me. I think it's going to be fun.
On Impact this Thursday, we have Impact Knockouts champion Deonna Purrazzo defending her title against Taylor Wilde. Jordan Grace taking on Masha Slamovich, and the Impact Tag titles, the aforementioned Chris Bay and Ace Austin, ABC taking on the Design, Khan, and Angels in non-title action. So decent. They're building up towards, it seems like Impact has another pay-per-view. So like they're so smooth in between the transitions. It really is pretty quick. So we're this close to Under Siege.
Yeah, that Jordan Grace Slamovich match, GCW World Champion Masha Slamovich.
Respect on that name.
So that's good, man. Deonna, I like Deonna having that title back around her waist. She beat Jordan Grace at Rebellion. Impact, guys, you're sleeping on. If you're just a WWE AEW mark, give them some love. You're sleeping on them.
And on AEW Dynamite this Wednesday, jam-packed, headlined by the TBS Championship, Jade Cargill defending her title against Taya Valkyrie. The International Championship on the line, Orange Cassidy against Bandito, which should be awesome.
Yes.
Sammy Guevara versus Darby Allin in a 4 Pillars tournament final. Kenny Omega and Takeshita taking on Butcher and the Blade, which is a very cool match. Obviously,
low-key banger. Low-key. I'm a big fan of Butcher and the Blade, man.
They're there to take the job, but Kenny and Takeshita teaming up. I love what we're seeing here with Don Callis, seeing them through, and has me feeling maybe Callis is going to turn on them with. I don't know, man. We'll see.
Here's my crystal ball, Ace. I think we're seeing Ibushi work into this elite. I think.
Ooh, I love it.
Kota Ibushi, mark my words, he is going to come into the elite with this whole BCC thing. I'd put money on it.
I love it. We have another appearance from Tony Khan, another announcement. He didn't say big announcement, just announcement. And we have a promo from Wardlow and also from Adam Cole. So Dynamite is, a tale of two different stories with Raw and Dynamite. We get everything announced up front for Dynamite. Yeah. Raw, we get two things, and it's a mixed bag when you show up to watch Raw.
Yeah, the thing with Raw, they give you like 2 matches and then everything surprises, and Dynamite gives you 6 or 7 things, and they still manage to throw some surprises you didn't see coming in there. So always a good time.
Well, that's all we got for wrestling tonight. Chad, let's hype up what's going on. I know the debate just dropped today, and we got obviously the flagship coming up, episode 151, as we approach another landmark on the uphill climb towards 200.
We're on our way to 200. We got the debate, like you said, dropped today on Apple and Spotify. The video is up on our YouTube. We had Jordan Wells from Pod Warriors and Chick Foley crushing it. Had a lot of good discussion there. We're recording another debate Wednesday night before Dynamite. Have Ella J coming back on to debate some topics with us. That'll drop Sunday and Monday of next week. Tons of stuff, man. Sneed's getting the studio all prettied up. He's got hanging some new curtains, getting all of his wrestling artwork put up. I mean, it's all coming together over here.
So we also have Friday, and almost just on time here. Bellcaster showing some love from the Facebook over here. So y'all killed it. Great show. Thank you, Bellcaster. Love you,
Thanks,
brother.
dude.
We have Shot Nostalgia coming up, 3 Raws. We're also on, obviously talking about Honor Society. Colton and I coming back, talking about Ring of Honor tapings. You can also catch, just a cheap plug over here for myself, IWTV will be dropping Remarkable Wrestling Cream of the Crop in the coming weeks. It was an absolute incredible show. Thank you guys so much for showing up that you did. We had a packed house in Quorum.
Big main event.
Main event. Gabriel Sky, Ken Broadway tore it up with the 3 stages of hell. And I'm telling you right now, if you are anywhere in driving distance from Long Island, you have to be there for Danger Zone 2, May 27th. Make sure you're there. It's going to be Channing Thomas versus Gabriel Sky. Channing Thomas won the Remarkable Rumble back in February. You're not going to want to miss this match. It was an incredible show. I had the honor and privilege of being the ring announcer for my 6th show there, and I'm happy. And so, honestly, I feel lucky to be a part of this remarkable movement because, to me, they're the best independent in all of New York, bar none.
That's exciting, man. I'm happy for you. You guys are crushing it, and that ladder match looked incredible. So, guys, go check that out when it drops on IWTV.
That's all we got, man. This was a fun episode. I can't wait to get into it next week and see where things have changed. If maybe we get more clarification on CM Punk.
Yeah, I'm sure it's looking like Punk for the foreseeable future might find his way into our top 3 more often than not. We try to find other stuff to put in there. We don't always want to talk about that guy, but we got to talk about the big stuff. So
his returns in like 2 months now at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Count the days, guys.
I know. Count the days. We'll be covering it all here on Wrestling Tonight, Mondays, 7 p.m. Go check us out, theturnbuckletavern.com. Check us out, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. If you subscribe and follow there, means the world to us. Until next week, guys, keep it snug and stiff, and we'll see you for some more wrestling talk.
Reach for the sky, boy.